Бачите, ви... Доброго дня. Ось вимкнулося світло і стало красивіше і більш торжественно. Мене звати Міша, я головний редактор порталу Rap.ua, це музичний портал, і учасник об'єднання Some People, яке базується в Харкові. Наш офіс знаходився у Палаці праці, і 24 лютого ми зустріли саме там, і 8 людей лишились там жити, волонтерити і намагатись продовжити свою діяльність. Коли всі щось робили, інші 7 людей, хтось готував, хтось збирав гроші для людей, які лишились в метро. Я не міг нічого більш робити, ніж писати. Це те, що я роблю все життя. І я пішов. У нас у підвалі була маленька студія звукозапису, і я там писав якісь вірші, пісні, і викладав їх в мережу. І досі я не розумію, як це працювало. А я до цього не писав і не викладав там нічого. Це почалось 24-го, і якось воно спрацювало, і їх почали слухати та дивитись дуже багато людей. Це допомагало і, зокрема, волонтерити нам. Потім через тиждень в наш офіс влучила ракета. Ви багато хто, я думаю, пам'ятаєте, коли перше відео, коли волонтер щось знімає, і в нього прилітає, це 2 березня, здається, було. Це ми. Ми там були, ми всі вижили, але офісу вже не було, і я далі писався там в іншому місці. Нам прийшлось поїхати звідти. Сьогодні мене з одним з таких віршів, який був написаний 28 лютого, запросили відкрити цей захід. Зараз все, що тоді писалось, ну ви розумієте, і як журналісти ви розумієте, що все, що тоді казалось і лунало, і той стан, який відчували ми всі, він був, ну його ж не можна ні з чим порівняти, він був, я думаю, що жоден там якийсь психоделічний досвід не може зрівнятись з цим, про який я читав, звісно. І сьогодні я прочитаю цей вірш. Ми не змінювали ані відеоряд, який там поспіхом був зроблений за 10 хвилин, ані вірш. Він може здаватись доволі наївним, дивним, тому що більше ніж 1,5 року вже пройшло, але можливо нам всім іноді слід сьогодні, коли з'являється і в медіапросторі, і в просторі взагалі в побутовому, цей цинізм, питання і більш спокійне, вивірене і холодне ставлення до того, що відбувається, можливо, десь іноді нам потрібно повертатись в той стан, тому що цинізм і холодна голова, вона потрібні, але, можливо, той стан і ті відчуття, коли були тоді, які були тоді, можливо, саме це і є ключовим фактором, який допоможе нам здобути все, чого ми хочемо. Також, ось щодо тривог, також в цьому вірші є одне нецензурне слово, за яке я не буду вибачатись, тому що вважаю його доречним. Дякую, можемо починати. Мені подарували війну. Її було загорнуто в гради, снаряди, кулі, тіла та вибухи. Замість стрічки по колу обмотано біллю, страхами, безглуздими викликами. Розгортати не дуже хотілося, але то все ж таки подарунок, тож треба видихнути і розгорнути, так і роблю. Під обгорткою щось, чого я раніше не бачив. Знав про це, чув, але раніше ніколи не бачив. 5-й день розгортаю, і видно, що всесвіт його взяв не на здачу, а обирав, хотів догодити або віддячити. За що саме віддячити, я так і не взнаю до свого жалю. Тому що під обгорткою ті, кого дійсно любиш. Може, раніше не знав, але зараз це точно. Під обгорткою ті, чий ти сон зберігаєш і дивишся у заплакані від паніки очі, але радієш, бо вони тут. Сльози закінчаться, очі залишаться, і ти, в принципі, більше сьогодні нічого не хочеш. Під обгорткою друг, який поруч, і йому не потрібно від тебе ні бабок, ні вигоди. Він просто сидить і просто мовчки просить тебе: брате, виживи. І ти виживеш, Бо відмовити такому другу то є тупо неввічливо. І ти виживеш, бо сьогодні, крім цього, вам більше зайнятися нічим. Під обгорткою люди, яких ти раніше вважав слабкими, чужими, але вони в один день поклали на всі звичні режими і стали країною одержимими, скаженими, навіженими мрійниками, які із посмішками дивляться в жерла. Ворог приніс зброю і ланцюги, нічого, ми зробимо все, щоб він жер їх. Невже мені треба була війна, щоб стати людиною, скинути лишнє? Виходить, що так, тому за подарунок дякую Всесвіту, чи Всевишньому, чи тому підарасу, якого скоро ми привселюдно на площі знищимо, бо сьогодні десь у бомбосховищі народилася Україна нова, і вона буде вічна. В центрі Європи сьогодні за день до весни відбувається диво. Криваве, страшне, в цьому диві немає нічого красивого, милого, але в ньому є люди, поруч з якими ми живемо, і якщо треба, загинемо, і то буде честь. Тож давай, якщо війна подарунок, ми його приймемо. Стійко, а ви дивіться, як Україна показує приклад. Ви так зможете теж, бо якщо не зможете, зло переможе і всім буде прикро. Але такого не буде, ми зможемо, виживем, вивезем, вистоїм. І хай свідком цього стане кожен снаряд, який просто зараз падає на моє місто. Дякую.
Друзі, мене звати Андрій Шевченко, і ми зараз бачимо, що у нас є тривога. У нас пропозиція переміститись в укриття, де ми спокійно зможемо в такому ж форматі продовжити роботу. Ми зараз почуємо інструкцію, куди ми йдемо. Настю.
Шановні гості, у нас укриття з залом знаходиться в будівлі Ю-2. Це біля UNIT.Café. Зараз для навігації вам допоможе наша команда. Будь ласка, прослідуйте на вулицю.
Ми продовжимо за 5 хвилин в укритті.
Так, там правильно, все. Я пішов? Добрий день. Так, давайте швиденько починати, поки там...
Let's start before the next air raid alarm starts, and we need to run to bomb shelter. So, without any pre-introductions, I am the chief editor of Forbes Ukraine, and this is going to be a public interview with the Minister of Digital Transformation, Mr. Mikhailo Fedorov. Mikhailo, you know what? I have numerous interviews, and now they asked me to interview you, which is a sweet deal for me because the Ministry of Digital Transformation has some tangible results that you can share with us, not some dull stuff. But you're a public person, you have great communications team, and you have communicated on numerous occasions everything there is to know. And finally, I figured out what my questions would be. The first one is, Mikhailo, who do you like more, journalists or technologists? It's like comparing your wife and your daughter. Okay, then, let me help you out. I am convinced that the technologists, well, why should you like journalists? We don't like ourselves. So here's the format. It's not going to be me interviewing you, but the technologists. Well, I thought you're going to make me your interviewer. Well, unfortunately, I'm not doing the 10th, even 1/100th of what you're doing, so it's not going to be fair to interview me. So how about technologists? What if the questions are being generated by the AI? Go for it. Okay. What should we start with? Let's ask the AI to ask 3 curious questions that would be of interest to everyone to hear the answers from the Minister of Digital Transformation. Well, once I was walking my dog, and somebody well, you know, Ivan Fedorov is the mayor of Melitopol. We're good friends, and somebody came to me and he said, "Ivan, are you Ivan Fedorov?" And you are the minister, and so I recognized that he actually addressed me, but then I said, no, Ivan Fedorov, no, just a person, a lookalike. So that's what I thought. You would start asking questions about Melitopol. No, 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 no. The mayor is well aware of who you are, and the AI knows that as well. So this bot exists for like 6 months, and I'm a journalist who has a longer career. So what are the key tasks that the Ministry of Digital Transformation has in front of it for the upcoming, well, not 3 to 5, but 1 year? What's your key goal for the calendar year 2024? One goal or plural? Plural. Well, we are updating the goals for my Ministry of Digital Transformation. You remember, when we were established, we were the first one that publicly prepared the lists of our goals. That's part of our DNA of my team. 100% e-services. 95% of population has access to fast, fixed mobile internet. Training 6 million people on digital literacy. IT is more than 2.4% of our GDP. That was pre-war, yeah. Well, not pre-war, but full-scale invasion. Then we launched UNIT.24, Starlink, digital technologies, electronic warfare, drones, the situational awareness on the battlefield, and many other fields. So, in essence, we had to get involved in military tech. And another important new area for us is transformation of government governance. It's not that we are writing the laws. No, we were creative by using technology, something that the president and then the prime minister suggested to us. Gamify the process of transformation of our civil servants. Well, and this is a spoiler, by the way. I haven't yet shared that story, and then I will get back to my goals, okay? So, just an interesting, curious area I never talked about before. So that's when we came up with the idea now. We are beta testing in the ministry the version of Dear Office, which is a follow-up to Dear App. It starts with civil servants, then Dear Military will come to play. So as a civil servant, you have a separate profile on a Dear app. Thus, you are offered new specific services, and that's what my Dear app offers me already. New functions. So, among them, carry out a survey or share the questionnaire within the ministry of the agency. We want to gamify the process because when I meet with the teams and when I talk with the deputies, project managers, and we have many new people coming in. So I want to get their perspective on what could be changed, and now they will have this opportunity to offer the idea, and then others will vote for it, and then as a dictator, I will support the majority vote. Or how to evolve the ministry itself and other functions as well, like awarding a badge to a colleague. We had a great staff meeting and we went with Boris Johnson Awards, something that you can give out yourselves. We integrated with Google, by the way, and our workspace is well integrated with Google. So there's a staff meeting. I don't know how with you, but we keep those meetings on Google Calendar as well as all the members of the staff meeting. And then we create temporary chat within Google. So just I don't need my assistants to share the minutes because everyone will receive the copy. Well, have no doubts that the Ministry of Digital Transformation, with cool experts, great results, and correct me if I'm wrong, but all of your deputies are like separate CEOs, and you have like a mentorship, visionary type of a position to follow, and you're progressive guys, right? I don't want to mention a ministry, but take any ministry, and you'll come to them with your dear office, and they would go automatic follow-ups, and their average age is 95. Well, I was waiting for this question. Well, I'll answer everything, and you'll understand the context of our. Uh, well, this is an informal meeting, right? I'm not sure whether you've taken the NDA. Well, back to the context. A new function. How about sick leave? And through this gamification, most of the civil servants would like to have this product. And to have it, you need to introduce the automated place, which would allow 10, 20, 30% of places to streamline, or as we call, automate. And it's going to become viral. Others, ministries and agencies, would see the use of it in increased performance efficiency, increased pay, and employment opportunities. And the next step would be, and that's why we are taking care of all those additional goals that we're declaring, because we want them to become public. We want each of you to enter this chat, even though you won't have the functionality of the state servant, but you'll see how many funds are we spending. And so if we introduce it, others will do that as well, because we have ministers who set up goals, who want to stay informative. So then the big next question would be, how come we see the goals of the KPIs and not here? And our idea is that everybody needs to set up goals, not only the goals for the ministry, but for the deputies, everyone, so that everyone would keep working based on specific goals. And these are the goals that we are working on right now, trying to make this functionality public, thus trying to show how could it work. And through gamification, we will ensure additional goals. First, you identify the goals, and then they select you. So people need to understand why they work for, and I cannot tell you more about those goals right now. It's the great responsibility of people who are working on them as we speak, and the biggest goals so far are transformation goals. We're going to launch the change of registration of the cars soon enough, and this will be quite a popular goal. So the next would be on 5G. That's an open secret for you. We would like to run the pilot next year. I don't know whether it's going to work out or not. So we want to improve 4G. There's too much equipment shifted to other regions, dismantling it. The quality of communications deteriorated, but my team improves it. The next goal, military tech and robotization. Drones, land platforms, and all the high-tech military technologies. all the other ministries and agencies will help us to outline the goals here, which will be result-oriented. And most likely the goal would be education, because we are revamping the Ministry of Education, the new minister, the new team. We have shaped the new education strategy.
Тому будемо працювати.
Something I would ask you more. Yeah, 80% of our time is war. Next, 20 is education and DIA. That's my prioritization looking forward. Well, DIA office was quite a curious novelty you shared with us. So the ministry is launching this initiative, right? Next week, the Ministry of Digital Transformation would be ready to launch this not as a test product, but as full product for our ministry. Well, I don't know whether I need to raise any spoilers here, but the Ministry of Health Protection will join us. The Ministry of Information will join us for sure. And in the Ministry of Economy, I haven't talked to Seridenko, but her team will be all in favor of this. And then, hopefully, everybody else would like to follow. This will be a technological magic and result-oriented. So 3/4 of what you do is military, right? But that's okay. You will have a chance to ask more questions of the minister about the army of drones and whatnot. But what about our AI? How would you raise digital literacy skills of your people? Well, let's talk about Dia Maria now. Maria is one of the products I believe in, and hopefully it'll have a larger audience. I don't want DA people to be jealous of us, but it has a higher potential than kids. So, but Maria stands in Ukrainian for dream, and it's a lifelong learning, right? So the philosophy of Maria reflects on it. So what's about Maria Dream? It's a digital product that would allow access to the educational content, to the tips, to the educational trajectory in real-time mode, easy access, updated knowledge, and very reasonable trajectory. What about the country? The country will know how to react, how to improve the educational services. So when the kids get grades and marks and see the feedback from the teachers and the parents, learn through this feedback whether the child is in the bomb shelter or not. And there will be a new competence evaluation sub-tool allowing the parents to identify the strengths of your child, because 24/7 you don't know how the child is doing in the school, but this product will identify those. So this is a reform-connected product, because there will be a reform of the pay and the work time of the teachers. The teachers will be paid for providing feedback to kids and parents, all interconnected.
Дивіться, ми ж знаємо школи, які є.
We have rosters of kids. We are well aware of new Ukrainian school standards. We know the textbooks, the manuals, whatnot. So we have big data available. And when we see the progress that the child gets, what informally the child is looking for in this app, that's how we can help the child to develop the skills it needs. So we will share the kids with recommendations, content, motivations. Like within 4 months, this particular child keeps a high math score and will offer the participation in Olympiads or a grant, or will share the success story with other schools, add to the stats. For the government, that's the ability online to assess how this works. So let's assume Maria exists and there's ChatGPT. If we want to be the higher level GDP country with high competition and high value added uh, innovative companies, usually established by people with well developed scope of competences and education. Well, mostly competences. And we need to raise them, those competences, by changing the educational sphere. So if we want to build a country like that, we need to explain to all the kids in Ukraine what the GDP chat is all about so that they will generate startups because we want to be the best developed nation. How to achieve that? Via Maria, because Maria is also for the teachers. We sent out a lesson on ChatGPT explaining to the teacher. So it's like the guidelines to the teacher, like similar to math or other topics, Ukrainian literature, how to use ChatGPT to better explain to kids everything. So within a second, we will explain to all the stakeholders nationwide how to teach the kids. And in parallel, record your lesson using all those materials. You will get 1 million hryvnias. That's it. The whole country, with the help of the technologies, will get access to the technology. Will have incentive and be motivated to use it. 3 clarification questions, if you will. Firstly, when do you launch it? How much does it cost? Who pays for it? And does anything like that exist in Ukraine, or are we the trailblazers? Let's start with the last one. There are no countries with similar products worldwide. South Korea starts generating something similar. I just learned recently. They even passed the education digitalization strategy. But we assembled a top team. I'm proud of this project. And they have found in the US a private company called Sputnik. A bad name, but great product. It's a non-state, tailored for individuals, not connected to databases, but cool gamification technologies, boards, feedback, AI integrated. We studied that. And your second question, when? The first couple of dozen schools would be piloted late this year. We have everything, TOR, architecture. We started coding already. 0 funds, because the Ministry of Digital Transformation starts with 0 appropriations from the state budget. The donors help in that. There's a huge interest of donors. We have no problems with funding. They keep asking us, what subject matter experts you need? We'll fund them. So the funding will come from the state budget only when we move to the cloud. We have a couple of clouds where we exist, safe ones. So 2024, you roll out? Yeah, most likely, if we have the cloud access next year. Well, next year, 100% of schools should be covered. That's our dream. While I'm typing the next question, in bullets, cyber protection, cyber attacks. What level of cyber attacks have you witnessed recently? Rating 0 to 10. Well, the maximum rating we achieved before the invasion, right or not? But are we better prepared than before the February 24th? Thank you for this question. Well, during full-fledged war, the rate is 10. 10 points out of 10 for cyber attacks from the enemy. No leakage of sensitive information in 18 months of full-fledged war, which means that homework was done well before we launched DIA. The architecture calls for DIA not to stare personal data, and another rule was on how the registers should perform. So we'll see any intrusions. All the information systems are connected to Security Operations Center, SOC. Before the full-fledged invasion, we established a raid team. That was a fantastical decision to make. This is a team that keeps attacking ourselves. We keep attacking ourselves. Imagine that. How much do you pay them for hacking you? Well, initially we paid them 1 million for vulnerabilities. USAID covered that. Tesla uses SpaceX. That's a well-known practice. You register them, they find your vulnerabilities, you apply, you pay funds for them. So that's a separate workshop for Fedorov in how to work with international organizations, like $1 million for white hacker, USAID. Will you pay for it? Yeah. Here you go. Yeah, fantastic. But the government of US is a genius in investing from the get-go, and now we can see it's working. A cool approach indeed. And they can explain to us why it's needed. Well, no, I'm joking. That was our initiative, but they supported us. And they launched their cyber project 2 years back in the USAID. I know Samantha Power, the head of USAID. She's fantastic. I'm reading the book about Obama, and he kept being afraid of her, even when he was the president. When she was visiting his office, she was telling him what to do, and he was afraid of her. So they did well. And then we established our own team. You remember when the foreign press started sharing the hints of possible full-fledged invasion and that it will start with cyber attacks? That's when we identified our vulnerabilities and improved on them. And then we passed the law. And then the governmental resolution on storing the data in the cloud. That's when we took all the registers, not all of them, but the most important ones, and we moved them to the cloud. And God forbid something happens to the physical infrastructure, still things will work. Google, Amazon, and Microsoft helped us in that. They helped us with experts, but when they've seen the results that it worked, well, we were in the red with them, but then Microsoft gave us the grant of $100 million. Brett Smith, the CEO of Microsoft, I'm coming to the interview and I'm putting on my suit. I thought, what great news I can give you. And then he said, $100 million to your cloud. And then Amazon said, are we worse? Well, and they gave us 75. That's slightly fewer than that, but thanks to them anyway. In the first week of invasion, the backup data center was destroyed by the missile, so all those grants helped. Now, it keeps coming back to me, but in the first 2 weeks of the full-fledged invasion, we hired, and donors helped us with that, we contracted one of the top world IT companies to run the audit of DIA in terms of security. It was the 6 months long. Well, do you remember the first weeks of invasion? Who thinks about the audit? But that's what we did. They wrote great recommendations, and we created this SOP, the situational operational center, and even though the journalists are no longer interested in this, but we are attacking the Russian infrastructure ourselves. So their threat level is 10 now. Yeah, systematically 10. Constant attacks from us. We are hacking so much information from their registers. We're not sharing this in our press, but that's what's happening. Isn't it the direct cyber threat, but it's still technology related, except in particular one person? 2 weeks ago, we learned that Elon Musk switched off Starlinks in Crimea when we were attacking them with our uh, maritime drones. So on the one hand, Musk supplied us with Starlinks, which was critically important. The whole front line depends on them. But on the other hand, there is this risk that one person and one person alone passes the decisions. We don't know what is the rationale behind this. How can you somehow impact that? Well, I can't share everything with you because that's state secrets. And as a public official, you can't do. Oh, come on! Only journalists are present here. Well, I wanted to read so many books, so while being in prison, I can do that, right? Well, jokes aside, I believe that he did help. He is helping, and of course, there is always a threat that any partner could stop helping. But whatever mass media tells us, that night I spent with Musk. It was daytime for him, right? Yeah. So when he shared our correspondence at that night, well, could be not that night, but days to follow. But he was helping, is helping, and if under such pressure that he used to help and now it's being interpreted differently and he might react negatively, I am concerned about that. I hope it won't, and I need to raise it. When we need it, he did make steps that should have been made. And even with this attack, I'm not delegated the authority to talk about this on the one hand, but and we go out of schedule. No, but he did introduce among the private companies the biggest investment into our victory. Without the satellite communications, I don't even know what might have happened. Just imagine you have been cut off. Well, military have no 4G or 3G, and radio uh, calls are being intercepted. Just imagine you are a military in the trenches, no communications. That's what would be without Musk. Everything else is hype, tweets, and whatnot. So your advice is think twice before writing a hate tweet towards Musk? Well, when I read him repeating the Russian propaganda, it makes me sick, like all of you. But unfortunately, you cannot tell everything, and you don't need to be private to confidential information. 42,000 Starlings were brought by our ministry, and the total number is 1 or 2%, even more. No other government institutions were involved in Starlinks. Whatever volunteers could have procured, but only 1 or 2%, because it's tough to procure such great numbers. And making procurements daily, we got super rates. We overload traffic. There was one day when they had shelling of our infrastructure, quite a tough day indeed, in terms of planning what we need to do in the next weeks, how to get out of the situation. And that's when I wrote to Musk, give us 10,000 Starlings. I didn't know the price, where to get it to. I said, I'll find funds. And he created the chat, CEO of SpaceX, and he said, Yeah, 10,000. Let's talk the logistics. That's all you need to know about Musk. Well, we are overstepping the agenda, and let's move from the AI to my questions. The army of drones. Share with us what you can, and what's the plan for the 2024? There are 46 billion, sorry, 48 billion for next year. Is it enough or not? What should we and the Muscovites expect? Next year, the goal is to fully meet the defense forces with enough UAVs to perform basic tasks. Speaking about regular troops, the tasks are artillery support, surveillance, reconnaissance. The goal is to have our assault troops with enough uh, assault UAVs, like with Starlings. Of course, somebody lacks enough, but yeah, I'm dealing with the army of drones. But when I see that the mall is also collecting drones, I'm donating, like all of you, because the drones could never be enough. And please keep thinking about this, because it's great when you see that the requests for drones dwindle out, but it won't. But we will increase the production of our drones in 120 or 140 times, 100 plus times more. You think, wow, but that's not enough. Production, manufacturing, you mean the assembly here in Ukraine? Yeah, Ukrainian vendors, both production and assembly. But the localization has started. This is the market economy in full swing. How can you expect localization without funds? You give the funds, then they think my profit margin is 25%. Here, by the way, the profit margin was 1% because how can I reinvest? Then we tell them, no, one, but 25%. And then the entrepreneurs start thinking about streamlining their costs, saving on logistics. That's where the proper localization started. So next year, we plan to increase the production some more. In the next 4 months would be uncomparably different from all the previous months of the use of the UAVs. Of course, this is an accumulating factor. But another problem is the Russian EW, electronic warfare. And here we're doing what we did with the drones. Open call with all the vendors, military, we research what's needed. The doctrine on the use of the EW, the scaling up of drones without anti-electronic warfare would not be that efficient. So next year, scaling up, filling in basic needs, and most importantly, about the production and manufacturing. We already have R&D, idea gathering, evaluation, piloting, contracting, feedback, scaling up. The flow is set. The next thing is to introduce NATO standards on the application and engagement. In real-time mode, we need to understand which UAV, where, what is the goal, what is the stretch with less drones, why one are more efficient than the others. How do you meet the engagement and application doctrine, whether we need to upgrade it, so then we need to introduce the NATO standards on how to use them on the battlefield, the matrix of synchronizations. So that's what we're doing. Whoever wants to ask the question, by a raise of hands. But first, my question to you. Tentatively, how many Ukrainian companies manufacture 100 plus drones a month? 100 plus? About 80 vendors. 80 to 90 vendors. But all in all, there's close to 230 people. We started with 3. but you don't know the largest vendors. They're not being interviewed. I have arranged an interview with one of them. I know about that. You don't even know that I know, but I know. So, we have cool entrepreneurs, tremendous individuals whom we promise that put on the back burner your capitalization plans. Help us at the front lines. Use your skills. And that's what they did. They defend us now. And in the upcoming months, the number of drones will keep increasing and increasing. But the Russians keep increasing their drones, their electronic warfare numbers go up. So yeah, this is new technological warfare. Yeah, every day we collect the data on all of the drones. Every morning, how many flights, how many we lost, how many targets destroyed, videos confirming that, statistics to analyze why this happened, and all those reports go to the military so that they would recognize how to improve on their communications procedures and the increase of the use of drones. Mikhail, I know that you have the next meeting after us, so we still have only 3 minutes left. So 3 brief questions and brief answers. Олег Панюта, ми Україна TV channel. When the MP Железняк hasn't found the budgetary line on the next year's elections, he didn't know about your Samantha Power connection. So, votes, will it be in dear? Well, that is up to the MPs. That's about on the application. So, but there is no task of adding elections. The CEC, the Central Electoral Committee, is not doing this. So, Rada TV channel. Lots of your colleagues in the ministry thinks, what would Ukraine look after the victory? So, digitally speaking, what would be our country's level of defense and protection, not only in digital environment, but getting to the borders of 2022 or even 1991? What would be the monitoring space of our drones 100 miles into the Russian territory? Well, it will depend on the level of technologies available there, because if tomorrow we get to the 1991 borders, well, aerial reconnaissance, of course, for us to get a better understanding of what the enemy is doing, our drones operating deep in the enemy's rear, broadcasting real time what's happening, open source intelligence or SINT, cyber reconnaissance, our ability to get there, scaling up the use of drones, both reconnaissance and assault drones, because the drones is the formula of success in this war. They're very important. Also, military training. That is the foundation, because we need to expose our military to the NATO standards and update our military doctrine, and the use of all robotized technology, something that allows us to see more, react faster, and kill more efficiently. That's what we need to develop, and the foundation is education. That's a brief answer. And the last question, please. Mikhaila, my question is on the army of drones. First of all, I'm grateful for you to launch this project, and most likely this question will go to the Ministry of Defense. Get to your question, please. On assault drones, you need to have the payload for them to explode. So when would you systematize and streamline the logistics so that the military will to retire commission. No. I know what she's asking about. We were the ideologists of opening the market for the ammunition. 2 months ago, we had this story before we passed this resolution. The drone ammunition could be produced by a number of companies. For the new company to be licensed, it has to sell to our government. So it's the vicious circle. To get the license, sell to the state. To get to the state, get your license. So we have the company that liberalizes all that. We passed the resolution. Commission has been approved in that position. And finally, this resolution opens up the market of ammunition. The first companies were licensed, and it will happen like with the drones. Huge number of vendors manufacturing non-stop, and the first small case that we have is in the 3 or 4 times we'll get 3 or 4 thousands of ammunition rounds. So nothing needs to be assembled in the trenches. Just affix it to the drone and then release it. And side defense technology is what we launch, which will digitalize logistics. And first quarter 2024, all the logistics would be centralized. In real-time mode, you'll see how much, where, and how it gets there. And then it allows for efficient decision-making, because when we lack drones, well, we have shipped some to them. Where are they? Well, they are at the warehouse. So real-time mode, oversee of what's happening to improve the efficiency of executive decisions. So this decision to open the ammunition market will help as much as our decision to increase the number of drone vendors. And the digital logistics would allow to improve on the executive decision-making process. Thank you.
So you are unbelievably inspiring, Mikhailo, and I am overwhelmingly optimistic after this conversation and about our victory happening sooner than later. So I wish you to be as strong, as inspired as you are, and to have more people like you in our government. Thank you. Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you for inviting me. So, yeah, let me answer the question about digital elections. It's very important to ask the right questions. So, my question is, what is the goal of your question? When you asked if when we are going to have elections in India, I answered you, no one is dealing with this. So, can we get infected with flu on Mars? That's my answer. Thank you. Dear friends, and we are transitioning to our next discussion. I'm Svetlana Chiparenko from Media Center, Ukraine. We will have the next part in which we are given three very important people 10 minutes to each, the ones who are important in the field of documentaries, and they are moving us closer to victory. So please stay here because the conversation is going to be very interesting. And this will be stories from people who saw the war firsthand, those who became military for a while, those who were visiting the front lines, and those who saw the destructions firsthand. So I would like to give the floor to Artem Shevchenko, who is joining us on stage. We know he is a wonderful reporter. We know he is a speaker of the Ministry of Interior, but also we know that he is someone fighting for our country since the very first days of the full-scale invasion, and who came back to filmmaking at some point. So I'm giving you 10 minutes. You can tell us whatever you want. You can show some tricks. I don't know. You have 10 minutes. Thank you so much for inviting me. Thank you, UNIT.City, for giving the platform to the community of media people. Let me share some thoughts on content making. I have worked in journalism and the media for my entire life. But then I joined the government service. I was not military back then, but since day one of the full-scale invasion, I also joined the military, and since then, I'm an officer, and communication is among my tasks. This experience, I believe, is quite interesting. It is hopefully both useful to the society as it is interesting to me, and I could share a poster with you. Here's something we did together with the Ministry of Culture and Information Policy. Well, it was supported by the ministry. There are 3 documentaries on the different forces fighting for Ukraine. And yeah, the Ministry of Culture was quite satisfied with this cooperation. So this was the film on Ukraine's reconnaissance and intelligence. So on the one hand, we are working for the government. On the other hand, we are making this content for every citizen. And this is my look from the inside. I'm also glad that we already have the English translation of this trilogy. So we will continue with the same approach. So I would like to continue to film the operations of reconnaissance, and it's indeed something that's been done quite well, and the results are great. So there was one more film recently on the shot pilots of Russia. So this was a 16 minutes long film. We are also preparing the English translation and translations into other languages. Romania is also interested to have it in Romanian. So it's very important to understand what's the audience we are working for. And there are 4 key audiences, each of which has some specific features to it. So we are working for the internal market, so to speak, so the internal consumer of the journalism product. So inside the country, I believe we are winning this information war, but of course we need to keep on working to keep at least the same level of support we are having here, because, well, the situation on the battlefield has some impact on it, and the external support of the country, etc. So there is one more level of the audience, one more layer of the audience, is the audience in our ally countries, such as the European Union, US, Canada, everyone else who is supporting us. Many of those people are far away across the ocean, and again, we need to make sure that the level of support in those societies is at least as strong as it is now. So we can be critical about the Western media, yes, but we need to make sure they are working for the good of us. And this is why, yeah, they need to get the necessary access to some equipment. Let's say if this equipment is being provided by their countries, such as the HIMARS machines. So yeah, it's their taxpayers that provided the money. So this is why their journalists are the first to get access to such equipment. So we need to make sure that we are feeding good stories to those Western media. So, for instance, mm, quite recently there was a request to get a pilot who is piloting a Storm Shadow. So some journalists wanted to get such access. Of course, it's difficult to ensure it, but I hope that the communication team of the Armed Forces of Ukraine and the Ministry of Defense will be looking for opportunities to provide such chance for the Western audience, for the Western taxpayers to have some good stories. And one more layer of the audience is, well, the audiences of the countries that are not strongly supporting Ukraine. These are the big and strong countries which are not 100% supporting us, or maybe they are supporting us, but they are not supporting us in practical ways as strongly as other countries. One good example would be Israel, which has huge military potential and capacities, but well, in terms of audience in Israel, I guess 1 million out of 5 citizens of Israel also have the understanding of the Russian language, so we could use that. But anyway, we need to make sure that the media in those countries are covering the events in our country as positively as possible. So, for instance, right now we have lots of those Israel citizens visiting us to celebrate the Hasidic Jewish holiday. So yeah, we need to use every opportunity to make sure that positive stories are disseminated in the media of such countries. So we also need to work on the markets of other countries that are pretending to be supporting Ukraine, but actually they are not, or maybe they are neutral, etc., etc. We need to make sure that we present our vision as positively as possible, as persuasively as possible. And one more audience, the final one, is the audience of the aggressor country. And quite understandably, it's the most difficult one in terms of the society, in terms of the limited freedom there. But still, it doesn't mean we should discard any attempts to impact that audience. yeah, they have some serious control measures in place, but we need to do our best to make something in the digital segment, and this is why we are also making the Russian versions of our films. So this is a very difficult task before us because they have lots of propaganda part in their ears and eyes daily. But yeah, it's still one of the audiences we need to target. So that's my brief introduction. If you have any questions, I'm here for you. Yeah. And also there is possibility to speak with our guests after the panel. Thank you so much, Artem, for your presentation. Thank you. And then we are inviting our next speaker, who is Svetlana Osenko, a journalist, a presenter, um, documentary filmmaker. For this last year and a half, Svetlana was doing some tremendous job. She was traveling with the emergency service to the workcamp sites, and she has worked in the field. She was the first to come to locations when Kyiv region was targeted. Svetlana's entire family is taking part in this media battle for our country. Her son is a military reporter, and also her husband is a cameraman for Radio Liberty. So, yes, Svetlana has made two important documentaries, one of which about Bakhmut, and yeah, so sometimes it happens that you are trying to make a heroic film and you're suddenly making a love story. Yeah. Okay, thank you. Thank you so much for inviting me. And I have never envisioned myself as a war reporter. I actually, I'm a coward. I remember the times when there were explosions all around. It was so scary here. But before this full-scale war, I have basically left the world of journalism. I was making documentaries. We were making some scripted reality work with the State Emergency Service. I got engrossed in the subject. I was so interested in the work of these people who are sacrificing their lives, or at least risking their lives daily. And since the beginning of the full-scale invasion, all of my jobs were over. The large projects stopped, but once we realized it was time to do something, I knew I needed to do something useful, and of course, journalism is not just a profession, it's a lifestyle. So, since the very first days, I asked the State Emergency Service to take me on board, and I was volunteering to support their press service, and I was making videos and photos they were using for their social media. And then I started making documentaries for the United Marathon on Ukrainian TV. I started documentary filmmaking, and when this entire situation started to unfold in Bakhmut, I heard that there were between 12 and 13 emergency service officers remaining, they were still doing their job because some of the locals were still staying in the city. So the emergency officers were staying there as well. There were fires happening once in a while, and even without running water, the emergency service did their best to extinguish the fire. So once I learned about this situation, even though I'm afraid of those terrible things, just like any normal person at war, I suggested that I could go there and film those heroes because, yeah, we are given some statistics, some numbers on the news, but the tasks of us, people like me, documentary makers, we need to show these stories for our society to understand who these people are, why they are there, and why they are doing what they are doing. So this is how I found myself in Bakhmut. It was January 2023. The city was partially encircled by the enemy back then. So we made some arrangements to have the meeting with the local unit commander. The had an armored vehicle, and we traveled there together. This is how I met Dmitro Nikolescu, and this is how our communication started. So we traveled to Chasiv Yar. They were bringing some food and water from there to people who still were staying in this semi-encircled city. And so I started asking him lots of questions about their work and how many of them were staying there and doing this work. And once I asked him about his family, his wife, etc., he told me that, yeah, I have a wife and I have a son who has just been born a couple of months ago. I saw tears in his eyes, and I was surprised because, well, we need to understand who these people are. These are the people who are apt in hiding their emotions. And of course, they do have emotions because, well, even before war, they have been um, helping people out in terrible situations. We all remember the big fire at the oil storage site. So I actually learned that I should sometimes hold my emotions. And Borodyanka, when we traveled there to support the local search and rescue personnel. And we know that some buildings were bombed in the very first days of the full-scale invasion. There were lots of people who were being pulled from under the rubble, and there were relatives who still hoped for at least some people to be rescued. But there was a smell of dead bodies all around, and this was the first time I was experiencing such a situation. And when the emergency services were pulling the bodies out, I was asking some questions, speaking with the search and rescue team. But when the day was over, that's when I realized it was too much for me, and I started crying. And one colleague who was back then the speaker of Kyiv branch of the State Emergency Service she took me by the hand and explained that, okay, if you behave like this, if you cry at the site, we will never take you with us anymore. So yeah, this is something that I'm learning from the emergency service people. They are the first to witness human suffering, and they are the first to rescue people from under those destroyed buildings. So when I saw these tears in the eyes of Dmitro working in Bakhmut, I understood how important his family life was to him. And this is how I realized I also needed to speak to his family. So we spent some time with those guys in Bakhmut. We were traveling with them when they disseminated humanitarian aid. So I had lots of mixed feelings. I was enraged to see such huge amounts of people there in Bakhmut. I was offering everyone opportunity to leave the place, but no, people were not eager to leave. And in this regard, it's very important to understand what is the importance of the state emergency service and similar services working to evacuate people. So then I got the phone number of Dmitro's wife, Anya, and I called her um, and explained that I wanted to interview her. So we were waiting for some time because Dmitro was awaiting his vacation. So the idea was that he gets a vacation and he comes visiting his family, and that's when I come to visit them and interview his wife. So we kept communicating with his wife, almost becoming friends, and then this day finally arrived, and I traveled to Kropivnitsky, where she was staying, and this was the time where I first met her in person. I was impressed to see this 23-year-old woman who looked very adult, very conscious. She gave birth to this child. She was taking care of this child alone, and she told me how she left her home city of Bakhmut, and she did this for the child. Well, I'm not a person who is well versed in military equipment, etc. I have never had a dream of becoming a military reporter, but I know how to tell stories. And when I learned Anna's story, I realized it will be more of a love story than the story of the emergency service. I have not seen much. I have not seen many couples of this kind. Of course, we were to an extent, of course, intruding into their private life, but still, it was so touching to see how he sees his child, maybe for the first time in his life. And I saw him looking at his wife, whom he hadn't seen for a couple of months already. So I realized how important it was to tell people such inspiring stories. We are all living in difficult times, but such stories are there to support those who are going through hard times. Maybe such a person gets an inspiration and finds strength to fix something in their life. Yes, we truly encourage everyone to watch Svetlana's film. Thank you, Svetlana, for this story you have shared. A round of applause for Svetlana. And now I'm giving the floor to Andrei Rizal, who has launched an unbelievable project, Culture versus War. That's a project showcasing Ukrainian artists, bringing victory closer and proven that now is the good time for music, for culture, for all of those things. So let us hear from Andrei firsthand why this project is important. Thank you. Thank you so much, everyone. And, well, we are speaking of the obvious here. Uh, Here is a war in which the Russian Federation aims to fully destroy the Ukrainian identity, which, of course, includes the Ukrainian culture. So let me come back to the very beginning of this idea. Since the very first days of the full-scale invasion, we tried to contact friends, and I had an in-depth conversation with Sergei Mikhalchuk, the great Ukrainian cameraman who is, well, a real genius, who has been nominated for international awards multiple times. And if you know him, well, he's not very talkative. He is almost whispering all the time. But in that specific occasion, he was really emotional. He was indeed speaking a lot. And sometime before that, he had to join the army. And I suddenly realized that this was something that needed to be filmed. So the focus of our project are the people who have joined the army. You have probably seen a little part of our project, the photo exhibition of Sergei Mikhalchuk and also the project by Vlada and Konstantin. So we have 6 completed documentaries as well, and I will show you the trailer for you to get a grasp of the general voice of those films and the characters, of course. We want to have independent life. We have spent 70 years in this prison of nations. We were told that there was no God. The eyes of the person before us is the eyes of the person who became much older very quickly. Well, we, of course, didn't want to die without a rifle in our hands. We wanted to die as heroes.
We all have civic professions and occupations, but the country required us to become soldiers. We have the gun and the camera. Thus, we want the civilians to remember this war. The example of the corpses, of the persons leaving the civilian life behind and going into fight became something unexpected to them. But when they learned that residents in Hostomel, Irpin were raped, tortured, and killed, not by Putler, but by his soldiers, made them pick up arms and fight. Here, unlike in the movies, you cannot make a copy. If the fate would tell me New York Times would never publish you and this war would never happen, that's what I would go for. No media, but no war. Culture is big politics. What's happening here is the warfare of cultures, of values, of principles. And the war is the result of them lacking culture and us having a rich cultural environment which raises us up. We need to withstand this invasion to embody the God's design for us to be free to create. Thus, let's keep fighting at the battlefield, in mass media, and at the cultural front. I am convinced that the worst is behind us. We are doomed for victory. Thank you. Our team enjoyed this project. It's so sensitive. Most likely there was no such skin-thin project before. Creatively speaking, you've seen 6 heroes from our 6 short movies, duration between 10 and 45 minutes, but all of them are focused on the phenomenon that at the same time those people who were creators of culture became the defenders of culture, and this is a unique transformation psychologically speaking. And this documentary video is about sharing those emotions and deliberations of those cultural actors. Of course, each product has its own target audience. Our is broken down into 2 parts, internal and external. Internal is when the Ukrainians can see that prominent Ukrainians are picking up arms and fighting. It's motivating, it's inspiring, it's the drive that pushes us forward and doesn't allow us to get tired, which is extremely important as I see it. As for the audience abroad, Artem was right in mentioning that our allies, as well as the doubting state, but first and foremost, the civilized democratic world, their citizens should understand why their government should help Ukraine. And when, through our movies, they can see that the values of the Ukrainians meet the best democratic values, our joint support, our attitude towards architectural sites, animals, or elderly people. So without any propaganda, we are able to convey this emotional, irrational component, which to the average Western viewer just drills down the point that you need to keep continuing helping Ukraine. And another goal of our project is to promote our project worldwide. We provide subtitles, 5 to 7 languages each video. So far we had 35 events abroad, and these are not TV or movie related fora. Mostly it's all about international assistance to Ukraine. The project does work the project is viable, and when at the fora they share even one of our movies, those people who doubted whom to vote for, after the movie, they vote for help to Ukraine. I have only 25 minutes left. Here's something to share with you. 4 of the films are online. Hashtag VS War Ukraine. You can see everything we came up with. Right now, we are finalizing the double feature movie, and also we published the book with the quotes from our actors, with the photos of Mikhailchuk and Liberov's family. Please pick up the book at the reception office. Thank you, Andrew. And as a follow-up, I can tell you that we'll have a brief break when you will be able to see one of the movies, War versus Peace, at 15:30. We'll talk about digital Ukraine. Stay with us. This movie is only 17 minutes long, while we spent 12 months doing it, so it's worth viewing.
Я б не виокремлював культуру зараз загалом до 24 лютого. Зараз немає поетів і не поетів, немає військових.
Української літератури сучасної.
Найвідоміший український письменник сучасності.
Письменник, поет, музикант.
Прозаїст, перекладач.
Я Сергій Жадан, я письменник, я з Харкова. Безперечно, так, те, що між нами відбувається, це війна культур, це війна цінностей, це війна принципів, це війна різних реальностей. Чи будуть якісь зміни в культурі, чи буде злам в культурі? Я би не виокремлював культуру зараз загалом, до 24 лютого. Зараз немає поетів і не поетів, немає військових і не військових. Зараз є ті, хто за Україну, і ті, хто не за Україну. Знати, що ти і далі лежиш за випаленою горою, що до тебе так просто дістатись дорогою, вивернутою, старою, місто, в якому я виріс, життя, яке видавалося грою. Але хто мене пустить тепер до твоїх околиць? Хто стане дивитись на мене з-поза твоїх віконниць? Що за радість вертатися в місто мертвих? Яка з цього користь? Зраджений тобою, викинутий за твої межі, відлучений від твоїх спальників та бульварів. Громадяни твої одягають святкові одежі. Земля під ногами здригається від ударів. Але поки ще не видно великої тіні, яка накриє твої вулиці й площі. І я стою, за випаленою горою, в сонячному промінні, і оплакую тебе, місто, ненависне, найдорожче. Мабуть, я не єдиний, хто оплакує. Мабуть, у мене більше немає дому. У мене є лише пам'ять. Але як вони б'ють із твоїх кварталів, чорт, як вони валять, як їм добре спиться нині в моєму домі. У місті, де всі імена відомі, всі адреси відомі. Коли ти, Господи, дивишся в дзеркало, що ти бачиш в моїй подобі? Горе тобі, місто всіма забуте. Горе твоїм жінкам, яким народжувати серед погрому. Місто зради, місто розпачу, місто отрути. Горе всім, хто не повернеться до власного дому. Тихі години липневого надвечір'я. Золоті зірки серед листя густого. Знати, що чорний дощ затопить твої подвір'я. Знати, що він не омине нікого. Очі країни після 24 лютого – це очі людини, яка швидко і сильно подорослішала, якій довелося бачити те, що, мабуть, і не хотіла би бачити. Але, як це не парадоксально, вона до побаченого виявилася готовою. Тобто побачене її не поламало, побачене її, власне, не випалило. Воно обпалило, але не випалило. Мені здається, що ми всі з цього всього виходимо, звичайно, змученішими, але, мені здається, сильнішими.
Передай своїм, що стріляти більше немає по кому. Наше місто було з каменю та заліза. У кожного з нас тепер у руці дорожня валіза. У кожній валізі попіл зібраний під прицілом. Тепер навіть у наших снах пахне горілим.
Трішки потерпіти, трішки зосередити сили. Перемога буде за нами, бо за нами правда. А правда Божа поругана бути не може.
Змінився темпоритм. Темпоритм життя, і загалом життя не було такої кліповості, де є перепади ритміки, де є перепади подачі, де інтенсивність прийняття, інтенсивність показу, вона кимось корелюється, та? Вона стає більш насиченою, більш інтенсивною, або навпаки ця інтенсивність спадає, але так чи інакше таке враження, що ми пережили величезний шмат життя.
Розкажи нам, навіщо спалили наше місто. Скажи хоча б, що зробили це ненавмисно. Скажи принаймні, що буде покарано винних. Скажи взагалі бодай щось, чого не скажуть в новинах. Добре, давайте я розкажу вам, що таке втрата.
Це не дуже добре, тому що це величезне перенавантаження. Це знаєте, нас всіх викинули, посадили в космічний корабель та й запустили в космос. Після 24 лютого в Харкові виникло просто десятки волонтерських штабів, центрів, хабів. Це тисячі людей, які включилися в роботу. Вони підтримували і цивільних, і військових. Більшість з них і далі працює. І це, знову ж таки, звичайні, так би мовити, пересічні харків'яни і харків'янки, які раніше, можливо, і не цікавилися особливо політикою, але то не включились, тому що це їхнє місто, тому що це їхня зона відповідальності, це їхня робота. І я думаю, що насправді це дуже важливо, що вони були, що вони є, вони великою мірою захищають місто не менше за наших військових.
Син Богородиці. 4 літери. Перша І. Роса з ночі лежить на осінній траві. Пахне хлібом в ранкових крамницях. Всі живі, повторюєш ти. Ще всі живі. Кров проступає на зламі, на темному шві. Смійтесь, чоловіки, в госпіталях і в'язницях. Вони сміються і вірять у чудеса. Роса лежить на траві, осіння роса, і кров на ранах, ніби смола на ялинах. І чоловіки спрагло дивляться в небеса. Ціле літо зрізала стебла коса. Любов тісниться в горлі, мов кров у судинах. Моя любов, як ця осіння смола. Де ти була, любове, коли нас убивали? Де ти була? Скільки ти ще проступатимеш крізь отвори у повітрі? Скільки ти ще проростатимеш із випаленого тла? Той, хто створив цей світ, не враховував зла. Надто беззахисні, любов, надто нехитрі. Ми надто залежні від твоїх дарів. Я хочу, щоб цей вогонь далі горів. Я хочу, щоб син Богородиці не злякався.
Для дуже багатьох українців стало шоком, стало цілковитою несподіванкою те, якою є Росія насправді. Себто це ж йдеться не лише про Володимира Володимировича Путіна, чи там, скажімо, міністра Шойгу чи міністра Лаврова, а йдеться про російське суспільство. Тому що людей в Бучі, в Гостомелі, Ірпені гвалтували, катували і грабували не Путін Шойгу. Це робили молоді російські хлопці. Поруч із нами знаходиться і існує суспільство військових злочинців, мародерів, гвалтівників і вбивців. І це якось важко назвати інакше. Тобто можна, звичайно, користуватися там російськими пропагандистськими кліше, але ж ми бачимо це на власні очі. І це якось важко пояснити і насправді важко прийняти. Тому що ти до останнього, навіть ворогові, намагаєшся бачити людину. Ти до останнього намагаєшся бачити в чужому своє віддзеркалення. Ти думаєш, якщо я не хочу тобі зла, чому ти хочеш зла мені? Якщо я не хочу тебе вбити, чому ти хочеш вбити мене? Якщо я не хочу забрати твоє, чому ти хочеш забрати моє? Ти до останнього цьому опираєшся, тому що так влаштована нормальна людська психіка. Чекають вечора люди, схожі на равликів. Так гірко сплять на вокзалах, так глибоко. Ламана лінія кордону, мов соснова гілка. Дорога важка, коли нею несеш на спині свій дім і своє минуле. Вперті равлики беззахисної Європи. Жінки, що залишили вдома чисту постільну білизну. Діти, що не відпускають материнську руку. Як прищеплені до яблуні гілки, не відпускають теплий стовбур. Ми потребуємо дива, потребуємо льодяників надії, дотиків радості, променів, що пробивають темряву. Що ти візьмеш, малий равлику, вибираючись із горілого дому? Насамперед, віру в те, що ти сюди неодмінно повернешся. Упокорений час шаленців і втікачів. Запекла віра тих, хто зійшов на вокзалі вигнання. Завжди пам'ятати розташування меблів у батьківському домі. Ховати в кишені ключі, як засушену квітку. Ось ця дорога, нині позначена безголоссям. Ночівлі ці, подорожні, поміж дощем і тишею. Будьте мужніми, равлики, будьте гідними цієї мандрівки. Ви позбавлені дому, проте не позбавлені серця.
Це можу. Окей. Друзі, всім привіт! Всім привіт! Дякую велике, що приєдналися до нашого.
Hello, and thank you for joining this session. I am from Genesis company, and we're going to discuss digital media in Ukraine. In particular, IT media. Thank you, UNIT.City and Media Center of Ukraine, for arranging this event. And I would like you to welcome our guests, Ilya Kabachinsky, IN UA Capital and Business owner, investigative journalist from Gov.ua. Get the pink one. Friends, hello again. Vlada, how about we change places? So, 30 minutes, right? Off we go. I searched for digital media trends, and a Deloitte report, circa 2023, suggests global trends for us to discuss, and it seems like they talk a lot about the millennial and Gen Z gap, how they consume content, what happens. And actually, what's written there and the analytics they have are not very relevant for this panel. That is to say, our war context disrupts our ability to follow global trends. How about you? What are digital IT and digital media trends you observe here in Ukraine? And are we with them, behind, or ahead of them? Thank you for coming to listen to us on whether we are behind or forward. Well, it's not what we need to discuss. The content is being observed by certain categories regardless of the ongoing war. And for us, the journalists, that's the challenge, how to distribute this content. That's exactly why we got into YouTube and TikTok, because the usual websites is not what people want the news to follow by. Others consume us on YouTube exclusively, with our users, people who never visited our website before. So I don't believe we are behind the context, and we need to recognize that there is a certain war context, and some niche media need to follow that trend. That's why we started following how IT employees are fighting in this war, how people volunteer. We started collecting huge donations and fundraising as hell. But once IT were 25-year-olds, 23-year-olds sitting in websites constantly. After the digitalization trades on, even people before 18, who are now 35 to 40, are still sitting at the website, but the younger category of users are not visiting websites that frequently, and we need to cater to them. Yeah, we are not behind, we're not ahead of them, because if you look at IE.gov, you'll see the same letters written. But the biggest problem is that the American and European media can earn on anything, while in Ukraine, only TikTok, but $1,000 for 1 million views. Others will get zilch. So we need to invest no less efforts to stay competitive, but we earn less from that because Ukraine is not offering monetization opportunities. And in the US project, uh, advertisers would fight for such projects in Ukraine before the full-fledged invasion. And I was at this event last year. Like, there's huge millions out there to collect. Now, no advertisers left. So, media need to do more now. And the media and Vlad are working. We are independent media. We need to earn for our living. We earn somebody for Instagram or those crunchers. They earn something, good for them. They take the TikTok challenge, we do that. That's not true only for Ukraine. Georgia and Poland, they are not modernizing the new formats and suffering from that. Podcasts, Spotify would gladly pay you if you are a US citizen and pay you nothing because you live in Ukraine. It's not because of the full-fledged invasion, but all the large platforms don't like us that much. And that's our competitive disadvantage. Thank you. Ilya, I echo what you say. We're not earning on media products. We have a YouTube channel, which is not profits, but not losses making either. 80,000 subscribers, and we earn nothing there. So we can only hope that when the war is over, the markets will keep growing and we'll start earning, but not now. Monetization. You have crust. As a subscriber, you get access to the articles under paywall. So what about paywalls? Neither of your two agencies have this option just yet. Is there any future for that in that strategy? Are you, any analytics on that, Ilya? Once we give it a thought, but then we earned enough on ads to pay salaries and evolve, and we refuse that idea to grow because you need a team, not just one person who would be generating additional products like the Ukrainians print magazines and books. What we earn on is does not allow us to get into that, but yeah, there are examples of Ukrainian media that earn on that. For me, the biggest problem is that if you're not New York's time, you can earn globally, but chances are small that you will start generating not $1,000 but $10,000 overnight. But with nice ads experts selling ads, $1,000 to $10,000 earnings is easy to achieve. So we see similar stories in Ukraine, like NV, Новое Время, and Ukrpravda, but these are huge media. In America, they have more exclusive contracts, but they have more people that are able to pay. Let's look into this some more, because our job is investigations and true story journalism. We have no funds for that just yet. And if they bring funds to Ukraine, get your hands on grants, which we didn't yet. With us, before full-fledged invasion, we were not monetizing our media income, and we never did this after the invasion, because during this full-fledged war, we learned how to earn money by monetization of our audience. We have, well, before, we earned on vacancies, job vacancies, but after the war, their number dwindled substantially, and thus we had to find new ways of earning. And this year, we have initiated two powerful projects: one in event business and corporate analytics, the second one. Quite a substantial financial boost for us. But we keep looking for new options because you don't always go the straightforward way. Your media could contain certain data, some small community of alike thinking persons, and you can monetize that, not always content. Each one of us have watched at least one episode of TV Toronto, and they have like a couple of $1,000 on their account, which is like laughable because Patron generated them the amount to pay for one job position a month. So I don't believe in the monetization of the communities to meet all your financial needs. Yeah, some of your team might be earning on that, but covering everything, especially with a large project, that would be really tough. And I agree that with a sponsor of the company starting with Cosmo, and you know how it ends, you'll get enough annual income for the whole year. Well, you mentioned Television Toronto channel, but they have other advertisers. But that's small income, 6,000 people for a huge team like that. But in US, you have subscription once a month and podcast once every months, and enough subscription fees to cover your living, but not in Ukraine just yet. Not yet. So the recipe is to diversify income sources. Corona pandemic or being a neighbor of Russia, something else might help you to survive. Exactly. Before the full-fledged invasion, we just lived. Everybody was swimming in happiness. I can't forget how happy I was. It was January, and all our performance indicators were through the roof. And then you think February will come and things will get even better. But alas, February 2022 showed us that our monetization is focused on vacancies. Vacancies are going down, so we need to start diversifying. For us, that was an opportunity. We might have not doing that in January. Everything was nice and dandy, but now, when we are facing the war and crisis time challenges, we need to become more proactive. Your answer inspired me to ask you, how about working for your reputation? March 24, 2022, I signed the first ads contract for a huge amount. We were the first ones to get funding from International Ads Corporation, and then others bought some ad places in advance. So at least at that time, we were not facing the need to earn our living. Just keep doing your work and it helps. I heard lots of stories like that from the companies who said that we pay certain media in advance so that they can survive this dire straits period, and we were offered funds. Yeah, and that's great. Content consumers are extremely important for media, and that's what you talk about. No need for no ability for direct monetization, but there could be other options, roundabout ways. So what's the treatment of your contents? In the time of global competition, a post in corporate Instagram can compete with you. Netflix compares with Dream Time at night. We even have a couple of articles ahead of Dow in ratings, and our girls pop up the champagne. Well, your people have already noticed that. Your second person have seen that already. So, how could you retain the attention to your platform, and then how could you share your Google Analytics with your advertisers? Like a person survives for 5 minutes, and then monetize that content. Well, surviving 5 minutes, that's quite a feat. Well, we started with TikTok, and you've never be better than TikTok. Even in New York Times, you have their own TikTok. One thing to hope for is that people still need some high quality, important, serious journalism. And Ukrpravda investigative journalism shows that when they write huge articles and lots of readers, and the fact that there will be a huge category of people to whom this objective information from those articles would be important, because unfortunately I'm managing the media, and that's why I say unfortunately, but each one of you is a content maker. We compete with everyone. TikToks, podcasts. My podcast competes with my media, and unfortunately I cannot imagine what could be done about this. Once again, speaking about New York Times, 10 different media to 10 different uh, brands. You use various formats to grasp attention, but for that you need a huge team, huge number of people. Write a nice text, that's not enough. Film a good video, well, there will be so many more takers for that. So if you are into journalism, keep doing that. And at some point of time, it will find its audience. Probably in the future, there will be high quality media like vinyl, old school stuff. People who want to get access only to high quality information. But how could you possibly overcome TikTok with $100 billion capitalization? Well, our media components is smaller to our website. 1 million media and 9 million the whole Dow. So people do visit our website. They can stay hours for hours there. And why are they sticking with us? Because we are a community. They stay with us because they want to talk to somebody, learn something, criticize somebody, call us grunts, eaters, troll us. So there's a huge effort going on. We know our audience. It's quite a niche audience indeed. We are not catering to everyone. We are investing into Ukrainian IT specifically. That's why we have fewer international news, because we try to build our community in such a way that they stick with us. You mentioned Twitter, the best place for Ukrainians to go after one another. What about the distribution of content? Telegram channels and Twitter are in top. What do you use? What works? What doesn't work for sure? is Facebook still a huge donor or lead generator? So what happens exactly? For Doe, the most important thing is stay organic. Google is our everything. Then Doe has quite a huge history, lots of archive content that is being rated by Google quite well. That's why huge number of people come to us. And then it became the audience that we retain. As for social media, Telegram and Facebook. Well, Facebook, not Twitter. LinkedIn is quite proactive, but they don't work because Facebook, it has cheap ads. We have almost being banned for our IT helps Armed Forces of Ukraine posts, but we have about 20 channels in Telegram where we stay fit. That's your vertical, right? Well, it works quite well for us. By the way, you mentioned LinkedIn, right? Lots of people haven't even thought about this. We have Iron Capital, which writes in English about the Ukrainian market, and about 16 other European markets. LinkedIn shares the most there. But what's curious, not only highest traffic, but brand awareness and confidence to the content. And now news about Polish or Baltic IT is shared from LinkedIn, being a professional network, while Facebook has died for them. For that, media doesn't work. So LinkedIn helped us to gain momentum, and Google is our everything. We want Syria to feel well, and the new standard that they have, nothing better than that. If you work well with the Google, nobody will compete with you. But we work a lot with getting quite a market share of direct visits, clicks. In our business website, we write a lot about the large direct, which are interviews with people, and since content could be transformed for the needs of Instagram, we have a strong Instagram there than in other media. So for each product, and by the way, LinkedIn would never enter that field because the owner of the coffee shop doesn't visit LinkedIn daily because that's not his story. So for each segment, we try to distribute the information differently. Back to the previous question. I have an idea to share with you. We come up with the IT products where it's important to learn about the retention rate, how often our users get back to use our products. So who plays this role in media? In products, that's a psychologist, trendsetter, researcher, A and B tests, does it fast, and half of the business on them, because retention is a very important indicator. So who plays this role in media? And is it possible to offer such position so that the people will be retained and read until the end what you create and generate? Something that you have. You have the community manager. For us, that's Holy Spirit. We just hope that people will be retained and keep reading us. Yeah, we have the community team for sure. That makes the community to be interesting to get back to Doe. So events area was not only about earning, but combining, gathering people online. Online helps you with your communications, with your loyalty. People know the team, they got acquainted, they talk to one another, so they know that, wow, Doe is great, these are our people, and we do try to work with them in a format of the community team, like an editor's office, making sure that people are interested to stay at the website.
And also, Ukr has this practice of posting videos of their team, because this way it's easier to come to know the operators, to communicate with them. And yeah, that's exactly what I was thinking about. So you see, there could be a double whammy in terms of user retention. Yeah, so things get reposted on social media, and then people tag Maria, Nastya, etc. They know who are the persons responsible. They know what exactly is happening. And then, okay, we have made some mistake, and Maria apologizes for that, etc. So it's a very good example of communication. It is not some ephemeral media. There is some real team behind this, and people know it. Yeah. So this is a kind of brand building, yeah, where there is a face behind everything. And people understand that it's a real person doing that, and you're building relationships with that person. Yeah, the personal brand is important, not only in terms of the team, but also in terms of the career and the connections. So there are very good opportunities for personal brand development right now. No matter what media you're in, you can start building your personal brand, and you will have a much easier life later, because you will have to make much less effort to find speakers, to find new jobs if necessary. Yeah, there is this good example how one user's Twitter helped to collect so much money for a certain cause. Yeah, okay. And one more question that I would like us to discuss, the most trendy thing of the recent times. Is it TikTok? Well, kinda. I mean specifically the AI. And speaking of the content and the media, it looks like the artificial intelligence has the highest impact on this business. And judging from the analytics, fewer people are using ChatGPT. So will there be any revolution? Will ChatGPT destroy the work of the journalists? About 5 years ago, I have been to a conference where I met one person from the former Medvedchuk channel, and she was telling us that she would never do any biased journalism. And here, in the same way, we can tell that AI will never do actual journalism. Yeah, they can rewrite a piece. Yes, they can translate a piece quite well. Okay, but if you are doing really advanced quality journalism, artificial intelligence will not substitute you. It will not interview a person. It will not come up with creative things, etc. So AI is not a threat right now. It is something that can be used as your aid. If you are making your website in Ukrainian and someone wants to read you from Poland, they can switch on the artificial intelligence tool and read the stuff and Polish. Yeah, I agree that artificial intelligence means help. So of course, well, as we could hear from Alexei Molchanovsky recently at iForum, he is specializing in computer science, and he was asked a similar question, and he answered that, okay, I was working with artificial intelligence 20 years ago, and back then there were some fears about it, and now you're asking the same question. Well, don't be afraid. Everything gonna be well. Some professions can be substituted, but they are the same professions that have to be substituted. So yeah, there should be one more employee among the listed team members, right? In ChatGPT. No, we will not be listing it, but still, it's a good news. It's great that we understand that it's not gonna be an obstacle to anyone. Yeah, I will just say that it's gonna be much worse because AI is skilled at making deepfakes, and so we will have much more work in terms of fact checking, and specifically in the political field, we will have more work to do. So we will have to hire more people. Yeah, we need journalists. That's the conclusion. Thank you so much for this discussion. Thank you so much for being with us.
Добрий вечір всім. Дякуємо, що ви в суботу ще
Hello, everyone. Thank you for staying with us on Saturday evening. I represent the USH program, RADA Next Generation, and it was our initiative to discuss government communications, government institutions, and one of the institutions ensuring resilience of our country is the parliament. Therefore, let us discuss today the government communications and other related things with Alexander Kornienko, the first deputy head of the parliament.
Добрий день, вечір, не знаю.
Hello, everyone. It's a bit dark here, so I can't. I could as well say good evening. Yeah, unfortunately, this war is ongoing, and unfortunately, it did not end in 2 or 3 weeks, and fortunately, it did not end in 3 or 4 days, and as some people predicted. So it's been a year and a half. We can make some summary and projections for the future. I will share some of my impressions as well as impressions of my colleagues and friends. For many people, the fact that the government institutions kept working, and as we could see from the Telegram channels and TV, we understood that despite the misinformation claiming that, okay, everyone has run away and the enemy is crossing the borders with no effort. But against that backdrop, we saw the parliament working. We saw the stream from there, and we understood that it was an important factor for government processes. Parliament consists of hundreds of people with their own personal agendas, ambitions, families, and psychology. So how did we manage to keep all that and work throughout the martial law situation? So how could we cope with all this, and how could we switch into this wartime mode? Well, Parliament is always an orphan in the communication world, yeah. So when we are making fun of someone on TikTok, we are first and foremost making fun of the Parliament. So the things I'll be saying here can be, of course, doubted, but a couple of weeks before the full-scale invasion, I publicly told that if there was a need to announce martial law, it will take us a couple of hours to get together and take the necessary decision. People were laughing, you'll all be in the airport, but actually at 7 a.m. we were having that session to proclaim the martial law. Of course, some people attempted to leave, and some people have lost their parliament mandates. So we saw that we were there in that precarious situation. I still remember some parliament members who were voting at the same time looking up. They were afraid the missile would come our way. So we had lots of meetings back then, high-level meetings, where we decided that the parliament will keep on working from the same location as long as possible, Grushevsky Street 5, although we did not have any advanced air defense back then. And the idea was that we would quickly assess the situation and we would quickly approve the necessary legislation as required. And well, this was also based on the preliminary work of the advisory group. So we were staying in different places, but we used Zoom to discuss the necessary draft legislation, what are the most pressing needs in terms of legislation. So until mid-April 2023, when Kyiv was under the threat of occupation, it was quite a productive period, and it actually resulted in a number of laws that had to be a little bit amended later, because if something is done fast, some of the consequences are difficult to predict. But there is systemic work we kept doing. There were discussions, amendments. There were some parliamentary infighting happening. So by mid-July 2022, we basically came back to our traditional modus operandi with some additional security measures enabling us to quickly come back to the martial law mode of functioning. And we were advised by Mr. Cox to have the format that is closed, and that is not a show, that is a way to really work effectively and address the issues at hand. Right now, the responsibility of the parliament caucuses is much higher, and also the committees are important because, well, the members of parliament have this desire to have maybe not that much politics and discussions in the meeting hall itself. So no matter what convocation we are speaking of, in every epoch and all the times, the Ukrainian parliament was truly Ukrainian, and we want to mention some important periods, such as the parliament of at the time of the Orange Revolution, then the parliament of the Party of Regents, elected in 2012, and our current convocation as well. We worked in very difficult times, and it was personal responsibility of every one of us, but it has worked out somehow. Okay, so we are being told that Ukrainian experience is quite unique, and we, of course, don't want anyone to experience what we are experiencing right now. So can we share any experience of how to organize parliamentary work in crisis? Maybe not during the war, but I mean in any essential crisis. There can be some good coordination from one center, but how do we keep democracy in a crisis? I believe that's a challenge. So can we provide any guidelines for the rest of the world so that in case someone finds themselves in a dire situation, they can use our experience? Well, yeah, theoretically speaking, we can do this, and we are getting some questions from the parliaments of other countries. We are sharing our experience, but we also need to understand that the internal regulations of the parliament are different in every country. There are no rules making everyone even, and once we launch the negotiation procedure with the EU, I hope it's going to happen soon, there is no section on the requirements on how the parliament should work. So we can share some things that are quite general. For instance, the approaches to remote work, and we were one of the first to launch a remote work of the committees, but unfortunately we could not make any arrangements of remote voting, so we had lots of people against this, and both the opposition and the majority in the parliament. Again, we were attempting to introduce this practice when Kyiv region was still threatened by the enemy, but as the situation grew safer, we gradually came back to the old modus operandi. And, some people are saying if you had remote work, fully remote works in the times of COVID-19, you would have a much easier task before you. So at least some of the sessions could be happening online. But still, there is some information exchange, there is some interesting experience that Ukraine has gained, and lots of institutions in the European Union are relying on the experience of World War II. So the British Parliament has worked in shelters for a couple of years, but in the last wars in Europe, they were quite short and they did not impact many, such as the war in the former Yugoslavia. So when we are being asked about the schedule, we answer that we don't have any. And people are disturbed when they hear this because in the European politics, everything is quite scheduled. Yeah, we have some schedules of missile attacks. Yeah, we had the habit of being attacked each Monday. Yeah, we have actually never adjusted the dates of our meetings based on the expected shellings, shellings or missile attacks. We are having these meetings, and we have alternative dates sometimes. There were days when we only had the opportunity to work for an hour or half an hour. We went down to the shelter and we did not come back that day. If it was 2 or 3 hours long air raid alert, we continued the next day. And there are some things that we are discussing with our partners during this martial law, during emergencies. The agendas may shift towards the more pressing issues. And indeed, in terms of European integration, we have some issues to address. The legislation on corruption, the legislation on the media. Well, some people would say there are more important things than the law on the media, but yeah, we found some time and voted on it. Or let's say the issues of the ethnic communities. So we are still discussing this. We are looking for options, and this is something that is useful for us, because we are not only working on the issues at hand about the money and the budget, etc. We have also voted for dozens of different things, and yeah, there is some systemic experience that can be written down into history of the Ukrainian parliament. Okay, and since we have journalists here, we need to mention communication as well. As a part of USAID RADA project, we had some research completed, and one of the things we discovered was that the parliament has had some instances of communication breakthrough. The social media content posted by the parliament was overwhelmingly popular, and increasingly big numbers of people are right now speaking of accessibility for the journalists. So yeah, the idea is you are the deputy head of the parliament. What's your assessment of this? Well, it's not the issue of the central office. It's the task of the services ensuring security in the central office, and of course there is the post correspondence in between the different stakeholders. I believe it would be much simpler if we worked in a place other than the government quarter in the city center. So yeah, it takes some effort and security procedures to get there. So it's only people who live or work in that quarter who have the access. So we are doing our best to compensate for this. We have a communication hub or a press center which has started operation since the beginning of the current session, and also a re-accreditation is being undertaken right now. I do not believe we have such huge numbers of actual parliamentary journalists. So the question is, there are many people from outside of the professional communities, and yeah, there are lots of representatives of the forbidden parties and representatives of their media. We will see if this gets more active. We will see if any safety and security factors become more important. Yeah, so the plans are there, right? Well, we had some discussion, but as a result, we agreed and voted for making those streams available on the RADA channel. Right now, RADA is taking part in the media marathon, but we will see what's gonna happen with it later, because we still have some government media, and the law on the media does not envision that. So it's an example of our regulations being more advanced than in the European Union. So, of course, these media have limited status. They are not large-scale broadcasters. I actually support the idea for the parliament to have its own communication tools. I don't know whether we should focus on TV right now, and we can see that many people are focusing on Telegram channels. Of course, that's a separate discussion subject, so we would need to make sure that Telegram is safe, but still, we need to think about this. Okay, so I have numerous questions at hand about the budget, about the elections, etc. But we have the voting hall, and we have the numbers. So please tell who you are and what your question is. Hello, I'm Metro Rasoha, the panelist of the next panel. And my question goes to our former colleague. First, the Committee of the Freedom of Speech has now lost its head, Nestor Shufrich. Well, yeah, if he uses Zoom, of course, he can still be a part of this work. Yeah, so would you like him to work on the Shikovica mountain? No. Okay, so in any case, I have very limited time to ask my questions. So we have two MPs left in the Committee on the Freedom of Speech, and also the Information Policy Committee, which has very few members. So why don't we merge them? That's question one. And question two is on the status of media. Why are you limited the status of the online mass media with the law on the media? Well, this law has been developed in close communication with the European Commission, and yeah, I was present back then while these discussions were happening.
The EU itself still has an ongoing digital media discussion about personal information and whatnot, and they're going to change it, and we're going to change it anyway. On combining those two committees, we did have a discussion about two committees, one to regulate, another to defend the market, so there should be some conflict of interest. I don't believe this is even relevant to discuss such serious parliamentary reforms like combining two committees into one. Well, come on. September the 16th. In 1 week's time, we'll have elections as planned, and we're going to be doing peacetime things, not wartime things. So it's all about how to manage it all that. Shufrich, before he relinquishes his mandate after being fired from the position of the chair of this committee, hopefully it's going to happen this week, and he will be taking out of the committee membership. So there are totally 3 members. So 1 should be added, probably from the fractions that don't have a person there. 2 deputies from the servants of the people. Party left, so we are open to discussions. So it should be a representative from non-mono majority. So who, in addition to European Solidarity, who numerously mentioned that they are ready to do that, well, there are 5 or 6 other forces that we need to drill on that. Roman? Hello. Roman Zubrinovsky. On the law on media, we came across the situation when in YouTube, and those who work in Facebook, Meta, Alphabet, Telegram, and TikTok corporations are the ones who regulate what's there and what's not. The EU and US work with them, but since they are extremely rich, they agree how to regulate it. So regulating this huge segment of media is done abroad, and they don't care about us. It would be great if my friend Mykola Fedorov would be here. Have you asked him about this? Yeah, we did. He said that the Ministry of Digital Transformation follows the legislation. Well, we can write in the laws that the Meta Corporation will have to listen to Minister Fedorov. It's going to be unconstitutional. We cannot pass the laws about corporations, and Minister Fedorov is in another jurisdiction altogether. So, what we can do is to simplify it somehow. But functionally, level speaking, it's all about the government. With all the above global corporations, unfortunately, this started happening because of the war, but at least they recognize that that's the war, and the fact that Elon Musk should follow X discussions on Twitter, well, this is not bad. At least all of them know where Ukraine is, and that it's not Russia. We've been fighting for this at all the levels, about hate parrots, about what the YouTube output which was similar to Russia before invasion. Now, everything, almost everything, is pro-Ukrainian. So yeah, it's not being done fast, but it's happening. My question is about the local self-government agenda. The day before yesterday, I saw you at the forum where we mentioned the draft laws on participation democracy, introducing changes to the law on local self-governance. Is it possible to see those draft laws on the agenda of the autumn session, so probably later? So what's your take on this? When can we see lessons learned on declarations, and is there any ongoing dialogue on redistribution of the state budget with a more focus on local governments? At the next meeting with the president, the draft law would be voted for on publicizing the MPs' declarations. 100% persons failed to vote. This time they will vote. That's all about the democracy. It started with the petition, but the position of the president was quite clear as well. On the autumn agenda, it all revolves around our accession to the EU. It's all about wishful thinking so far. And we keep adding more wishful thinkings. But that's all subject for discussion, right? And that's where the parliament shows that 87% of people are in favor of becoming the member of the EU. So that's how the parliament will vote for. On the budget, there's an ongoing discussion, of course. An uphill battle for all of us. Especially about the redistribution of the budget funds. But unfortunately, this might happen within the next not 2 or 3 weeks, but years. So with all the respect to local self-government, I was one of the authors and lobbyists of that law. In the 9th convocation, we voted for 1,400 communities, but with all of my respect to local self-government authorities, none of them will build the artillery shells manufacturing facility or procure enough shells we need. The military tax does not belong to local taxes. It came into existence on the 24th of February with all the other projects. How to support the needs of other brigades, that's what the locals are doing right now. And we are working on this to keep this mechanism one way or another so that the military units will be able to meet the additional needs through that channel, in addition to what the Ministry of Defense gives them. But we need to go through that phase and come to the format where the government, most of its funds from the taxes, 99 to 200, even 105% after New Year, because defense costs would be more than our taxes. So they need to be focused on defense. International systems focus only on social protection. I'm the lobbyist of the committee, raising the focus on the important laws that we need to pass. especially the law on aldermen. Lots of them were conscripted. So, unfortunately, we ran out of time. Alexander, thank you for being here, answering our questions. The most important question has never been asked about the elections. Let's keep intrigue afresh. Well, I would like to thank everyone and say that there's a huge appreciation to the Ukrainian people, to the members of parliament, to journalists, representatives of media. I was one of the authors of the law that non-combatants should be considered to be victims of war like journalists. So this law has been passed, and they will expect payments to be paid like that of the fallen soldiers. So after the war is over, the parliament will have to satisfy it. Of course, no money will substitute lives of your colleagues, and we appreciate the work of the journalists because from the standpoint of the integrity of the statehood, it's important that there are people who tell the truth. That's the informational warfare, the war of propagandas. And it's important for us to have a structured response. So, on your behalf, I would like to thank your whole industry, wishing you to have peace and quiet, and hopefully we'll be able to meet some more in this format discussing elections, dirty tricks, and whatnot. Well, our ability to discuss is already the confirmation that we won. First Deputy Speaker, Mr. Kornienko, and the chair of the Next Generation Rada program.
А ми останні, так? Так. Ми сьогодні дуже нарядно у нас було в першому. Оскільки ми пішли в бомбосховище, вони там сіли всі коліна в коліна. І там вийшов такий квартирник. Там що Міша, що Аня такого не говорила.
Шановні гості, дуже на вас чекаємо на заключну.
Friends, we are ready to launch our final panel discussion. We're gonna launch this session in 30 seconds.
Отже, будемо починати.
We start on time. The earlier we start, the earlier we have after party at the terrace. Jack Daniels and wines of the world are our moderators. I represent the media center, which is, together with UNIT.City, is the co-organizer of this beautiful event. Let's talk about the communications. It's great that some of the speakers before this panel have raised the importance of this topic. Irina Pobedonosova Office of the President, Taras Shevchenko, Deputy Minister of Culture and Information Policy, here with us today. Another person who is indirectly involved, Roman Gubernovsky, advisor to the Triple S CIT, and the editor-in-chief of Aglyadach Observer, who raised the bar by claiming that there is no information policy in the country to speak of. So, before all that, let me ask the question to all of the panelists. I've been thinking myself, what are the state-run communications? And I came blank. So, how about you? Is it a solo with back vocals, or a choir, or Eurovision bands? So, what are the state communications are all about? Vasil, it's great that you have announced a pleasant conclusion of today, thus entertaining your question in particular. State communications. Look, I've been working with the communications, state and non-state alike, and neither state communications bring the victory closer, but non-state communications fail to do that as well, because we have one and the same goal, the victory in this war. This is a meta goal which stays a bright shining star for us. And the formula to reach that goal is easy. Contribute daily to support the country against the enemy, and any communications, state or non-state, stays efficient when what you said was heard and understood. When the communication is clear, transparent, and the message that you conveyed was adequately and relatively understood. Do we have one voice? Frankly speaking, no. What do we need to make it happen? Well, it's a philosophical question. All the manuals on communications claim that, yeah, that's what's needed. But time flies faster than the manuals on communications. We live in the maelstrom of communications and news daily. The focuses, messages, narratives change. In ideal case scenario, one voice is a useful tool. Is it realistic for the time being? I believe no. A huge score of factors are against this happening, namely, very fast and powerful pressure, informational pressure that individuals, societies, countries, and globally the whole world suffers from. Secondly, there are certain individual traits, various types of speakers who want to become media important and savvy, thus positioning themselves as speaker number one, number two, number three, and we can talk about this separately. And no one voice, unfortunately, for the time being. Yeah, as a tool, it's superb. But this is a tool of an ideal case scenario. And one more thing to add here is that we want to avoid cacophony, because you can sing in different voices, but the tone should stay the same. So it's a choir. It is a choir. You can sing in 3, 2, many more voices. Importantly, like in a happy marriage, you don't have to see it one another. You have to look in the same direction. So the communications, it works for communications as well. And which way to look into? Well, I formulated this as already. It's the victory. So the victory shared as the joint message of state and non-state communications. So what about the state communications? There are a few of us in the ministry now. So in addition to European integration and media 2 weeks ago, the arts, philharmonics, and theaters added to my scope of responsibility. So the word orchestra choir resonates with me in this position in the Ministry of Culture and Information Policy. So the answer is the choir. Secondly, it's important how we evaluate the efficiency of all the state communications, because often enough the criticism is about the format, a product, a particular situation, but it's all about how can we evaluate the performance of the whole orchestra. And my proposal is to assess the sociology that researches and polls the people about the situation in Ukraine, how optimistic they are looking forward. Do they believe in the victory? Do they believe that things are moving in the right direction? So, looking at those statistics, things are quite positive indeed. In more than 30 years of independence of Ukraine, the citizens, unfortunately, most of the time believed that things were moving in the wrong direction, with certain ups and certain downs. The revolution of dignity was an up. Election of President Zelensky was another up. Huge mobilization during the beginning of the invasion was another up, and this trend goes on. So that's the trend that still perseveres. When we talk about why Ukrainians are so resilient, our resiliency believes in our belief in the future. We believe that things will be great in the future. That's why we think positive, we stay resilient, and support the victory effort. Only the communications efforts won't be able to cover all that, because you comment the policy. And the English word of the word policy, regardless of what political suggestions were made. So two components: the performance of politicians and the communications themselves. Speaking about the information policy, and I might sound as a dull lawyer, that's my background, none of the European countries will have information policy as one among others. But if you look how our ministry delivers, well, especially under information policy title, well, it's information policy in the sphere of media, setting the laws on how the media performs, which is what every Ministry of Culture in Europe is doing in EU countries. The second component is openness of information, accessibility and transparency of the authorities. That's also part and parcel of information policy. The third is information security, countering disinformation, something, and not only here but in law enforcement agencies as well. Communications is number 4. And when speaking among friends, we say communications policy. These are different ideas. It's important that this panel is called communications, because when you use the term information policy, it's not well understood. So it's not clear what you want to talk about. Information policy or something else.
And finally, I may sound as a lawyer right now, but if we look for this specific term, information policy, it can be found in the law on information. It includes ensuring access to information for everyone, ensuring equal opportunities for collecting and disseminating information, creating prerequisites for the information society, ensuring openness and transparency of the activity of government authorities, development of e-governance, updating the capacities for information resources, and contributing to international cooperation in the field of information. So this is how the law defines the information policy of the government. So I suggest that we use the word communication when we speak of communication. Yeah, sounds great. And when I heard the word sociology, I wanted the microphone to be passed to me. Well, yeah, there are some misunderstandings here. So, the Ministry of Information Policy is also there is also a mistake in the title, yeah? So, again, the situation is changeable. It's changing on the ongoing basis. It's just like the textbook on journalism. They are written by those who are not practicing journalists. So yeah, among the tasks we have communication tasks as well. We are communicating the image of Ukraine abroad, and we unfortunately are not hearing much public discussion about these things, but indeed there are lots of associated issues. Yeah, so let me answer this way. So yeah, it's a choir, but it's a choir of soloists. So everyone working for a government institution knows these things quite well. But also I disagree in the sense that there is no united voice, but there is more unity, definitely more unity than before. And people are indeed asking questions when they want to avoid mistakes. So people are working more professionally. We are more successful in, let's say, debunking Russian narratives. So this one voice is the result of every communication player looking around and thinking about their responsibility. And it takes time to develop something like this. One more thing that I would like to share about my vision of the efficiency of ministry concerning the existing propaganda and television marathon. Well, partially it has worked. The patriotic component of propaganda works really great, and there is this patriotic feeling that exists in people, and this feeling is strengthened by the media. People want to be patriots, and when we worked with a national agency on corruption prevention, we checked whether people have heard about the portal, the portal for the corruption whistleblowers. So people have not heard much about it, but people supported it because, well, they are against corruption. And in terms of marathon, people actually dislike the fact that the marathon was trying to silence the issues of corruption, and since lots of people started discussing this on social media, well, the United Marathon had to mention those subjects as well. So it's like the feedback loop that helps to learn on the mistakes. And one more thing, one more component is the set of issues that are relevant abroad. So I believe right now that news and emotional updates from Ukraine, they don't work anymore. You know, like think back to the times when we were watching things from Afghanistan and Syria. That's one thing. And one more thing that people can see from abroad is lessons learned. So here, the world is eager to learn from us. And for the upcoming months, this is a very good opportunity for us to sell the Ukrainian experience abroad. So it is difficult to do because this is not about some emotional stories. It's not about making some beautiful picture. So but those who are engaged in this field, they are in the forefront of communication abroad. And this is something that we are doing much better than in 2014. Thank you. So when I was invited by Andrei Shevchenko to this event, I wanted to add a bitter note to this sweet conversation, but I will start with a different thing. The story that you are probably not aware of. At the beginning of the full-scale war, the traditional channels collapsed. There were lots of fakes circulating, and Irina Pobedonostova has created a little journalists' chat to share verified information. So at any point in time, we were able to take command from the commander-in-chief or other important officials. So this was our way to get important verified data very quickly. So first and foremost, thank you for this. And secondly, I need to mention that communication is in Ukraine is the field of those who are active, not of those who have important positions. So Taras Shevchenko was not heavily involved in this until recently, and I am really not aware of what the Ministry of Information Policy was doing for quite some time. In the beginning of the full-scale invasion, there were lots of misunderstandings between us and the Ministry of Defense. Also, one more big issue was the international journalists. It was very important for us to have as many of them as possible visiting Ukraine. Well, it took some time for the ministry to issue those permits, and there were obstacles to foreign journalists going close to the front lines. But yeah, there were those who were assisting in this process as well. So I don't know if it was happening this way. And maybe I'm slightly hyperbolizing, but the cultural department in the ministry is dealing with permits for the destructions of memorial of culture and also giving permits for filming. Yeah. So I'm probably hyperbolizing a little bit, but yeah, Taras, you are unusual in this ministry, unusual in the positive way. But the problem of this Ministry of Information Policy, which actually should be the Ministry of Communication, unlike many other, like many other ministries, except for the Ministry of Defense and the Ministry of Digitalization, they are focusing on only a part of their duties. So the press releases of our ministries are mainly describing some activities done by their management. Yeah, but there are also other things that people need to know. So it's very important to focus on the public opinion change. But again, people are not really doing the work. People are working to satisfy the prime minister, but this results in inefficiency and insufficient coverage. So this Mikhail has been the prime minister for quite a while, but I don't know who their press secretary is, and I don't know what exactly is the prime minister doing. So, you know, the ones who want, they actually work in the field of communication. And the communications need to be worked on. So if there is the special communications service, well, they need to address some issues, but yeah, there are lots of issues that need to be addressed after the war as well. Yeah, the problem is we also do not understand who is the decision maker. We don't know whether the ministry has to initiate some policy or it has to follow directions coming from somewhere, if yes, from where. So your questions from the floor, please raise your hand. Yeah, speaking of the information policy and trust from the official authorities, Vadim Denisenko's Institute of Future completed a survey in late August, and they say that the source of information leading in people's trust is Telegram. The messenger made by Pavel Durov, the Russian businessman who initiated the social media that is banned in Ukraine, which is vk.com. Then goes the list of other social media, then goes TV, then goes Facebook. So very importantly, 50% of respondents mentioned that they are not watching the national marathon at all, and only 14% of those who are watching it fully trust it. So yeah, with all due respect to the journalists engaged in it, my question is, what should we do with this TV marathon? The second year after the full-scale invasion. So there is a huge level of trust to Telegram, and we have doubts about the trustworthiness of that information. So if people trust Telegram much more than the national marathon, of course, people trust not the Telegram itself, but certain channels on it. Yeah, so as a specialist in this field, you need to understand we cannot say that people trust Telegram. Yeah, Telegram is a platform. Yeah, but I'm just quoting the leading trusted source of information is Telegram. Yeah. So that's also the issue of how the question was framed. So do you trust Telegram? I mean, well, if it's the Telegram by the president of Ukraine, yes, I trust it. If these are Russian channels, I do not trust them. In the same way, the marathon is represented at different platforms. And of course, the platforms and brands are different things. But we need to consider the source of information rather than the platform. So yeah, what should we do with marathon? Let's hear from the Ministry of Information Policy. Yeah, but your question was asked, the question of this survey was phrased in a very peculiar way, of course. Telegram is just a platform, but what should we do with TV marathon? Yeah, TV marathon is one of the many sources of information. We have a multitude of them right now. Everyone wants to present the information, collecting it from different sources. And, some people read the platforms by government official bodies. Some people take information from Telegram channels. Some people trust their friends and relatives. So TV marathon is something that we should not overestimate or demonize, etc. This is one of the information sources in the broad palette of choices available to the audience. You can use your Telegram, other social media, or TV marathon. It's the freedom of speech, and people are let's say, developing their own agenda based on the information sources that are trustworthy or interesting in their opinion. Information marathon was established, and we are coming back to the beginning of our conversation. It was established to form this one voice, which was so important in this crisis situation, which was the onset of the full-scale invasion. So how was the chat established? Well, that was because of the pressures of time. We wanted to make a press center in the office of the president. We launched those briefings, and we were told to evacuate because there was a threat of a missile attack. So this was our transition to a virtual press center, and yeah, that's still the same title that the chat keeps. I don't know if people are still using it, but still. The marathon was established with the very same purpose. This is a consolidated effort by the leading Ukrainian TV channels who are working to inform people on things. Yes, there are different complaints about the marathon, but this is just one of the many sources of information. Yeah, a few words about the marathon. So 71% of trust. Is it the number that's high enough? Yeah, quite high. So let me quote again from the same survey. 14% of the respondents fully trust. 57% mostly trusted. So also, please do not manipulate this information. So you have only quoted 14% of respondents to say that the level of trust is quite low. But you are manipulating the information because trust consists of fully trust and mostly trust. So we can see that the majority of the audience trust the TV marathon. So yeah, we have launched some fact-checking session unexpectedly. Yeah, let's hear from Arist. Yeah, well, if the colleagues have some questions about TV marathon, they probably meant that the kind of marathon we had in the beginning of the full-scale invasion, it needs to evolve, it needs to be improved. So yeah, there are some wartime reporters. Yeah, there are some challenges about the level of optimism. Yeah, that the military quite often have the complaints about the programs being too optimistic. So the question is, even if we are not dismantling the marathon altogether, we could somehow change the focus. So yeah, let me add briefly. I believe that Irina has mentioned the right thing. Marathon was the response to a certain situation, so the impression is that the situation has changed, but the response is still the same. So yeah, maybe the marathon can stay in one form or another, but the response should change. Yeah, and I have a question about the victory and its international aspect. So how do you see the victory of Ukraine at and the related communication with the international partners? You know, it's a semi-joke, but there is some sadness in it as well. So when I come to work, when I talk to people, I often ask them, when is the war going to end? Yeah, that's a question that is important, and we all have this on our minds for quite some time, for many years already. And so what is victory in the media sense? There is some positioning, there is some vision shared by the president of our country and the speakers communicating on the international level. So how do we make sure that this comes true as fast as possible? How do we make this simulated reality come true? Something that is circulating in the media, something that is verbalized, but also needs to materialize. Well, as I have mentioned before, first, we trust in the armed forces of Ukraine. We make donations and we are taking some small steps wherever we are to bring the victory closer. And this is the motto of our service as well. We are sure that victory is going to ensure the integrity and sovereignty of our country and the territorial integrity and the recovery of our country. The country that has proven it is strong enough to exist on the international map. And one more brief comment. You know, after the Russian troops go back to the borders of 1991, the war will be ongoing in the cyber field. So one of the tasks we will have before us is to keep explaining to Europe and other places that the war is not over. And while Russia is still there, while the same people are still there, they will find their ways to destabilize situation in multiple ways. And whatever we are experiencing right now may be experienced by others later. Yeah, there were state borders of the older periods as well. So yeah, I hear people complaining about the marathon creating this overly optimistic vision of the war. I disagree with this because in every statement there should be some balance, some presence of reality, because this marathon has persuaded people that we can survive through this war. Of course, it's not happening as fast as some people promised us. It takes longer than 2 or 3 weeks. It takes lots of effort and human lives as well. We all understand that while we are sitting here in this beautiful place or in our offices or in the government institutions, we have to work every day to bring this victory closer. Because what is communication? When I discuss this with my students, we joke that communications are much like neurosurgery. If people have this feeling that we will survive, it is great. But if people believe it's going to happen tomorrow, it's not that great. So how do we find that balance? Well, that's a task for all of us. So both the government communications and non-government communications, we need to be careful. We need to stop saying that victory is happening tomorrow. Yeah, your question now. Thank you so much. I'm Volodymyr Bertynenko. I would like to ask a question and hear from the ministry that we have, different platforms, but you're saying that the TV marathon is just one of the options. So then should we finance all the other platforms from the government budget as well? Well, but my question is not about that. My question is also about the verification of information, because we have lots of speakers there. We have lots of government representatives sharing different information, and sometimes it is contradictory. So, yeah, the question is about information verification and information security in this war, because we understand that this war is a hybrid war.
So in this hybrid warfare, we have battlefields, combat at the trenches, but also there are thousands of Russian federal government officers distorting information, sharing with European partners and catering it to Ukraine and domestically, brainwashing their own people. So my question is, what about information security? How the line Ministry of Culture and Information Security is doing that, and how do you share the results of these efforts with the society? The ministry needs to be renamed Taras. Just drop the information policy from the name and change it with information policy. I'll be brief on the verification of information. TV Marathon and others should use only verified sources. The structure of Marathon is comprised of mostly private and, to a lower extent, state-run channels with their own professional journalists and editors. Mistakes do happen on air, by the expert, or elsewhere. I don't believe that's the job of the ministry to dictate or verify the sources or claim whom you can interview and whom you cannot. So in terms of the unconfirmed, unverified sources, there are less of them in Telegram, but probably they are sharing more emotions there, and probably the speed of Telegram is faster. In Marathon, lots of things happen before events happened, and we can share that because in Telegram you can share anything, even the banned pictures, but not on the marathon. And thus TV loses its audience. Information security and protection strategy, approved by the order of the President, calls for 7 information security policies, like combating disinformation through our coordination center. Igor Solovey heads that center, and they're doing great job indeed. Advocacy, whatnot, debunking the myths, training the civil service. Another component is protection of the journalists. That's up to the ministry. Openness of information is another one, and how to organize the system of government communications. It's our job to have close connections with the departments of communications of governors' offices and the oblasts, communicating with the regions. Thus, information security has a number of dimensions, and we can discuss them at separate fora.
Раз, два і будемо закінчувати. На щастя. Я б повернувся до того, з чого починали.
Let me get back to what we started with. A choir or a solo performance? Well, choir is about listening to your neighbors, not only being a soloist yourself, but at that case, you need to sing in two voices as the minister when combining two ministries. So what the ministry was doing, and then what's about your question? Well, the information policy, down to the point who brought whom to the front lines. Well, since Mr. Tkachenko was fired from the minister's position, well, a month passed, right? The lack of a person filed to this position confirms the lack of seriousness in the attitude towards this ministry. And the second question? First, a brief remark on the marathon. As a viewer, I believe that the marathon was treated as a 100-meter distance to run, not as a marathon like 18 months we're doing now. So nobody can tell you how to firefighting change their sprint to style distance. So what could have been done before February the 24th? Well, having correspondence points in Kyiv representing the Western media, building relevant connections with Meta, come up with the algorithms how to deal with the press officers. So the question to the panelists, do we have things like that as we as the country should have done before the invasion or even dozens of years prior to that? Well, communications doesn't resolve everything. You can't claim that communications will do things better. Well, why open offices in Ukraine if nobody will come here to Ukraine? And then all of a sudden they come to Lviv Media Center. Everything stems from the need. And Meta and others would pay no attention to Ukraine until the European market, because of importance to them. I believe that all of those stories, we need to focus on becoming part of the European Union, G20, part of the bigger bloc, where inside you discuss all that, not making it seem like we're on our own. And for some reason, I know one person who has a vertical communication structure, and it's Russian Federation, and I don't want to follow their suit. What can you add to that? Well, I won't comment on the first issue. There's the Chinese proverb, as they say, to have a strong oak, because the best time to plant the oak was 20 years ago. The second best time is now. Plant the seed now. Let's discuss what we should we be doing now, not what we missed to do before. We need to decide what could be done now. What are the main tasks? Of course, in terms of problems and needs, yeah, lots of stuff left, but I'm glad that my first task in the ministry before the war was to launch the Strategic Communications and Information Security Center. More than half a year before the invasion, it was launched. And Mr. Bulska, as the first manager, issued the guidelines on your actions under emergency circumstances, which was quite a hit back in summer and then in February. We launched the Filter Media Literacy Program, and also, at the beginning of the invasion, we have invited you in Ukraine Forum to come and help us attend the main press events site, because as a state-run national media agency, we created Media Center to be the focal point of everything. And the foreign journalists who recognized that, along with us, that 90 days are over and they need to leave the country as non-residents, we immediately passed the decision with the cabinet ministers and at Media Center when we discussed the challenges of the foreign journalists. By the end of that meeting, we informed them that 5 minutes ago the government passed the resolution allowing them to stay in Ukraine for as long as they need. Well, summing up, I want this marathon to be over like the real-life marathon. Somebody will come to Independence Square in Ukraine and say, the marathon is over. I would like to thank this beautiful panel and Vasil Samakhvalov, its moderator. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, there is a way for us to go through liquid staff meeting, and the easiest is to go through back doors 11 o'clock to the back terrace. The last phrase, ladies and gentlemen, the third Redkolegia summit is over, at least its official part. Thank you for your contribution to the victory.